Hey everyone, welcome back to Ask Literature, the channel where we explore the fascinating intersections of literature, theory, and the human condition. In today's episode, we're diving into something a little bit different, something that merges literature with science. It's called Darwinian Literary Studies, and it's a growing field that looks at how evolutionary theory, particularly the ideas of Charles Darwin, can help us understand literature in new and exciting ways. So what exactly is Darwinian Literary Studies? Essentially, it's an approach to literature that asks how our evolutionary past shapes the stories we tell, the characters we create, and the themes that resonate with us. Just as evolutionary biology seeks to explain human behavior through natural selection and adaptation, Darwinian literary scholars try to understand how these same forces influence the way we read, write, and engage with literature. Now, to get into it, we first need to think about what evolution means in a biological sense. Charles Darwin, in his groundbreaking work on the origin of species, introduced the idea that all life evolves through natural selection, that is, traits that are beneficial for survival and reproduction get passed on to future generations. Over time, species adapt to their environments in ways that maximize their chances of survival. But here's where it gets really interesting. The same principles that apply to biology can also be applied to human behavior, psychology, and even art. Literature, after all, is a reflection of human experience, and as humans, we are products of evolution. Darwinian literary studies suggest that the stories we create and the characters we relate to are deeply rooted in our evolutionary history. In other words, the very act of storytelling could be an adaptive trait, a way for humans to communicate important survival information, form social bonds, and explore the complexities of human nature. Let's take a moment to consider why certain themes in literature seem to be universal, appealing across different cultures and time periods. Themes like love, death, betrayal, heroism, and conflict seem to resonate with readers everywhere. According to Darwinian literary studies, these themes are not just random choices by authors, they reflect fundamental aspects of human nature that have evolved over millions of years. Take the theme of survival, for instance. Many classic stories, whether it's the Odyssey, Robinson Crusoe, or the Hunger Games, center on characters who must overcome life-threatening challenges. Why is this so compelling to us? Darwinian scholars would argue that survival stories tap into our evolutionary instincts. We are hardwired to care about survival because for our ancestors it was literally a matter of life and death. Another example is romantic love. From Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet to the modern-day rom-coms, stories about love are everywhere. But why are we so obsessed with love stories? Evolutionary theory suggests that love, particularly romantic love, has deep biological roots. It's connected to reproduction and the continuation of the species. In this way, stories about love reflect the evolutionary drive to find a mate, reproduce, and ensure the survival of our genes. The emotional intensity of love stories resonates with us because it mirrors an evolutionary process that has shaped human behavior for thousands of years. Darwinian literary studies also examine how characters in literature exhibit traits that would have been advantageous for our ancestors. For example, we often admire characters who are brave, resourceful, and intelligent. Think of Odysseus in the Odyssey or Katniss in the Hunger Games. These traits are not just random qualities that make a character interesting, they reflect evolutionary traits that would have helped early humans survive in a dangerous world. Bravery, intelligence, and resourcefulness are qualities that would have been selected for over time because they increase one's chances of survival. So when we root for these characters, we're tapping into something deeply ingrained in our psychology. But Darwinian literary studies don't just focus on heroes. They also explore the darker sides of human nature: violence, betrayal, jealousy, and deceit. These traits, while negative, also have evolutionary roots. In the competition for resources and mates, early humans often had to outwit, outfight, or deceive their rivals. Literature reflects these darker aspects of human behavior as well. Consider Shakespeare's Macbeth or Iago in Othello. These characters are deeply flawed, driven by ambition, envy, or greed. From an evolutionary perspective, these traits might have offered short-term advantages in a highly competitive environment, even if they ultimately led to destructive outcomes. Darwinian literary scholars also examine how group dynamics play out in literature. Humans are social creatures, and much of our evolutionary success has depended on our ability to cooperate and form alliances. This is reflected in countless works of literature where group loyalty, friendship, and betrayal are central themes. Take Lord of the Flies, for example. The novel explores what happens when a group of boys is stranded on an island and their social bonds break down. It's a study in the darker side of human nature, but it also reflects the importance of social cohesion for survival. Darwinian literary studies would argue that the breakdown of order in the novel taps into our deep evolutionary fears about the consequences of losing social structure. One of the most fascinating aspects of Darwinian literary studies is how it can be applied to the interpretation of both classic and modern texts. For example, many Victorian novels deal with issues of social class, ambition, and morality. But through a Darwinian lens, we might see these themes as reflections of the competition for status and resources in a highly stratified society. Even modern dystopian novels like The Handmaid's Tale or 1984 can be viewed as commentaries on power dynamics, control, and the human instinct for survival in oppressive environments. Now, while Darwinian literary studies offer fascinating insights, they are not without controversy. Some critics argue that reducing literature to evolutionary psychology risks oversimplifying the complexity of human experience. After all, literature is not just about survival and reproduction, it's about culture, imagination, and the human capacity for creativity. And yet, Darwinian scholars would counter that our ability to create and enjoy literature is itself a product of evolution. Storytelling, they argue, might have helped early humans make sense of the world, form social bonds, and pass on important knowledge to future generations. In the end, Darwinian literary studies provide a unique lens through which we can view literature, helping us understand why certain stories resonate with us on such a deep, instinctual level. By exploring the evolutionary roots of human behavior, this approach reminds us that literature is not just an art form, it's a reflection of who we are as a species, shaped by millions of years of survival, adaptation, and change. That's all for today's deep dive into Darwinian literary studies. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more fascinating intersections of literature and theory, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. This is Ask Literature, and I'll see you in the next video.